cried for reinforcements, but Earth's Deathworlders brought Oblivion. The emergency beacon pierced through the void of space like a dying scream. Commander, Zaravel pressed her six-fingered hands against the communication console, her crystalline skin flickering between deep blue and panicked silver as the reports flooded in from across the Meridian sector. "Commander, we have confirmation from the outer colonies," reported Lieutenant Kex, his insectoid features twitching with barely controlled fear. "The Void Syndicate has broken through the astral defense grid. 12 systems have gone dark in the past 6 hours." Zaravel studied the holographic display showing their sector of the galaxy. Red warning indicators spread like a plague across star systems that had been peaceful for centuries. The Void Syndicate wasn't just another pirate organization. They were something far worse. They consumed entire civilizations, leaving behind nothing but empty worlds and debris fields. "How many ships are we facing?" she asked, though her hearts were already sinking with the anticipated answer. "Intelligence estimates over 300 vessels, Commander, and they're using technology we don't recognize. Our shields are useless against their weapons, and they seem to feed off our energy discharges." The Void Syndicate had appeared from the dark regions beyond the Galactic Rim 6 months ago. Their leader, known only as the Harvester, had made his intentions clear in broadcasts that chilled every civilized world. They would consume all energy, all life, all matter until nothing remained but the perfect emptiness of the void. What made the Syndicate truly terrifying was their technology. They didn't just destroy, they absorbed. Every ship they defeated, every world they conquered, added to their growing mass of hybrid technology. They were becoming stronger with each victory, and the Galactic Defense Coalition had proven helpless against them. "Commander," Kex's voice cracked with strain, "Admiral Thex is requesting immediate conference from the Course Worlds." The hologram of Admiral Thex materialized above the command table. The ancient Zephyrian's usually serene features were twisted with desperation. Behind him, Zaravel could see the chaos of the Fleet Command Center, officers of a dozen species running between stations, as displays showed the systematic destruction of their outer defenses. "Zaravel, I need your honest assessment," Thex said without preamble. "Can we hold the line with our current forces?" Zaravel studied the tactical display one more time. The numbers were clear, and they painted a picture of inevitable defeat. "Sir, we've engaged them in 7 major battles. Each time they absorb our weapons' energy and use it to grow stronger. Our conventional tactics are not just failing, they're helping the enemy." "That's what I feared," Thex replied heavily. "They just consumed the research stations at Crystal Nebula, 8 million scientists and their families. We arrived to find nothing but empty space where 3 planets used to be." The weight of those words hit everyone in the command center like a physical blow. The Void Syndicate wasn't just conquering territory, they were erasing entire worlds from existence, consuming every atom of matter and energy until nothing remained. "Sir, what are our options?" Zaravel asked, though she could see the grim desperation in her admiral's ancient eyes. Thex was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that Zaravel had never heard before. "We're going to call for help from the newest members of the Coalition." "The humans?" Kex asked, his compound eyes widening in disbelief. Everyone in the Defense Coalition had heard the stories about humanity. They came from a world so hostile that most Coalition species would die within minutes of breathing its atmosphere. A world of constant geological upheaval, extreme weather, and predators that hunted in coordinated packs. The humans had only joined the galactic community 3 years ago, and most civilized species still viewed them with polite curiosity, dangerous primitives who had somehow achieved space travel. "Sir," Zaravel said carefully, "the reports from their world describe a species in constant conflict. They wage war even against their own planet's environment. Are we certain about this approach?" "That is exactly why we need them," Thex replied grimly. "Our forces are designed to maintain peace between civilized species. We use measured responses, surgical strikes, diplomatic solutions. The Void Syndicate understands only consumption and destruction." Suddenly, the proximity alarm began screaming. "Commander!" shouted the sensor operator. "Void Syndicate fleet detected. They're dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system." Zaravel watched in horror as over 40 ships materialized at the system's perimeter. But these weren't the clean, geometric vessels of civilized space. The Syndicate ships were twisted amalgamations of consumed technology, organic curves melded with crystalline structures, metal plating fused with energy matrices that pulsed like living hearts. "All coalition forces, assume defensive formation," Admiral Thex commanded from his flagship. "Prepare for engagement." But even as the order was given, Zaravel knew it was hopeless. Every defense coalition vessel that had engaged the Void Syndicate had either been destroyed or worse, consumed and added to their growing fleet. The enemy didn't just defeat their opponents, they turned them into extensions of their collective nightmare. "Send the emergency beacon to Earth," Thex ordered, his voice heavy with the weight of galactic desperation. "Maximum priority transmission. Tell them we face an enemy that consumes entire civilizations. Tell them we need someone who can fight a war that we cannot." The message was transmitted across the void toward the small blue world that had surprised the galaxy by joining their community. Zaravel wondered what kind of response they would receive from a species that had spent its entire history fighting not just each other, but their own hostile planet. The reply came back faster than anyone had expected. The human response was simple, direct, and somehow more unsettling than any war cry. Message received. Terran Extinction Protocol fleet deploying immediately. Estimated arrival, 48 hours. Advisory, stand clear of engagement zone. We are not coming to fight alongside you. We are coming to end this. As Zaravel stared at the cold professional response, she felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's environmental systems. Something in those words suggested that humanity understood exactly what kind of enemy they were facing, and they had already decided how to deal with it. The human fleet arrived exactly when promised, appearing at the edge of the system like wraiths emerging from the void. Zaravel counted 24 vessels, each one a masterpiece of predatory design. Where coalition ships were built for exploration and peaceful contact, these craft looked like they had been forged in the heart of a dying star. "Those are the human ships?" Lieutenant Kex asked, his voice filled with awe and terror. "They look like they were built for the end of worlds." Zaravel had to agree. Every human vessel was black as the void between stars, covered in angular armor plating that seemed to absorb light itself. Weapon ports lined their hulls like the eyes of some deep space predator, and strange energy signatures pulsed through their superstructures. "Incoming transmission from the human fleet," reported the communications officer. A new voice filled the command center, calm, controlled, and carrying an undertone of something that made Zaravel's crystalline skin flicker with instinctive fear. "Coalition Defense Forces, this is Admiral Reaper of the Terran Extinction Protocol Fleet. We have analyzed your tactical data during our transit. All coalition vessels will withdraw to minimum safe distance immediately." "Admiral Reaper," Zaravel responded, "with respect, we have extensive experience fighting this enemy. Our combined forces should coordinate." "Negative," came the immediate reply. "Humans specialize in complete threat elimination. Your forces are not equipped for the level of warfare we are about to deploy. Withdraw now or risk being classified as contaminated assets." Before Zaravel could ask what that meant, space around the human fleet began to change. The darkness between stars seemed to deepen, and instruments throughout the coalition ships began registering energy signatures that made no sense according to known physics. The Void Syndicate fleet, detecting the new arrivals, began their standard approach, a massive wave of ships that would overwhelm and consume any resistance. Their leader's voice boomed across all frequencies. "More matter for the Void. Your primitive vessels will feed our infinite hunger." But the humans weren't responding like any coalition force the Syndicate had encountered. As the enemy ships approached, the human fleet didn't form defensive lines or attempt to negotiate. Instead, they began to spread out in a pattern that utilized the entire star system as their battlefield. "What are they doing?" Kex asked, watching the tactical display in confusion. Antintori, the answer came as the first human ship engaged the enemy. Instead of energy weapons that could be absorbed, or projectiles that could be defended against, the human vessel unleashed something that violated every principle of civilized warfare. Reality itself seemed to tear around the enemy ships. "They're using weapons that manipulate space-time," whispered the science officer, his voice filled with horror. "They're not trying to destroy the enemy ships. They're erasing them from existence." Zaravel watched in fascination and terror as human weapons created localized distortions in the fabric of reality. Void Syndicate ships didn't explode or burn. They simply ceased to exist, leaving behind not even debris or energy signatures. "How is this possible?" she asked, unable to believe what she was witnessing. Admiral Reaper's voice came through the communications system, calm and matter-of-fact. "Earth developed these weapons for fighting enemies that cannot be allowed to exist. Some threats require responses that go beyond conventional warfare." The systematic destruction that followed was unlike anything in galactic military history. The humans didn't fight like any civilized species. They fought like a force of nature that had decided certain things should not exist in the universe. Their weapons didn't just destroy, they unraveled the very atomic structure of their targets. When Void Syndicate ships tried to absorb energy from the human weapons, they found themselves consuming something that destroyed them from within. The hybrid technology that made them so dangerous began to turn against itself as exotic matter invaded their systems. "The enemy is attempting to retreat," reported the sensor operator, his voice filled with amazement. For the first time in months, Void Syndicate ships were fleeing from a battle, but the humans weren't allowing retreat. Their vessels moved through solar system like apex predators, hunting down every enemy ship with methodical precision. "Coalition vessels, this is Admiral Reaper," came the transmission. "We are implementing containment protocols. No enemy vessel will be allowed to escape and report our capabilities to their command structure." What followed was the most terrifying display of military efficiency that Zaravel had ever witnessed. The human ships worked in perfect coordination, using the system's gravity wells, asteroid fields, and radiation zones to create a trap that no enemy could escape. But the true horror came when the Harvester himself appeared on the communications channels. The leader of the Void Syndicate had never shown fear before, but now his synthetic voice carried something that might have been panic. "What manner of beings are you?" he demanded. "We have consumed 1,000 civilizations. We are the Void that will devour all matter." Admiral Reaper's response was delivered with the same calm professionalism he had shown throughout the engagement. "We are humans. We come from a world that has been trying to kill us for millions of years. We have spent our entire existence learning how to eliminate threats to our survival. You are now classified as an extinction-level threat to galactic civilization. You will be completely eliminated." The final assault on the Harvester's command ship was beyond anything Zaravel could have imagined. The massive vessel, built from the consumed remains of hundreds of conquered worlds, found itself facing weapons that existed outside normal physics. The human ships unleashed what they called quantum cascade weapons, devices that cause matter to decay at the subatomic level. The Harvester's ship, which had seemed invincible against conventional weapons, began to dissolve as its own atoms turned against it. "This is impossible!" the Harvester screamed across all frequencies. "We are the Void! We cannot be destroyed!" "Everything can be destroyed," Admiral Reaper replied calmly. "You simply haven't encountered a species that was willing to develop the necessary weapons." As the Harvester's ship disintegrated at the molecular level, his final transmission revealed the true scope of what the Coalition had faced. "You fools! We were not the threat. We were the guardians. The Deep Ones are coming, and only the Void could have stopped them." The revelation hit Zaravel like a physical blow. The Void Syndicate, which had seemed like the ultimate enemy, had been running from something even worse. Something that existed in the dark spaces between galaxies. Something that the Syndicate had been trying to prepare for by consuming entire civilizations. But Admiral Reaper's response showed that humanity was already aware of this larger threat. "We know about the Deep Ones. We've been preparing for them since we first detected their influence. The Void Syndicate was just the first wave. When the real enemy arrives, we'll be ready. As the last Syndicate ship was reduced to its component atoms, Zaravel realized that humanity hadn't just saved the galaxy from one threat. They had announced themselves as the guardians that civilization had never known it needed. The cleanup operations that followed revealed the full extent of human preparation for threats beyond normal comprehension. Every piece of Syndicate technology was analyzed not just for intelligence, but to develop countermeasures for the deep ones that the Harvester had mentioned. "Commander," Lieutenant Keck said quietly, "are all human military operations conducted with this level of thoroughness?" Zaravel considered the question as she watched human science vessels methodically cataloging every atom of the former battle zone. And they weren't just cleaning up after a victory. They were studying the enemy's technology to prepare for the next threat. "I believe," she said slowly, "that this is how humans respond when they encounter something that threatens not just their own species, but the concept of existence itself." Admiral Reaper's final briefing took place aboard his flagship, a vessel that Zaravel now realized was less a ship than a mobile extinction event. The interior was as practical as its exterior, every surface optimized for the business of eliminating threats to human survival. The Void Syndicate was consuming civilizations to build defenses against the deep ones, he explained with clinical precision. They believed that only by becoming a perfect void could they resist entities that exist outside normal reality. They were wrong. "What are these deep ones?" Zaravel asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. "Entities from the space between realities," Reaper replied calmly. "They view our universe as an infection that must be cleansed. The Void Syndicate was their first attempt to establish a foothold in our reality. There will be others." The systematic nature of human preparation became clear as the briefing continued. They had been monitoring threats beyond the galactic rim since before joining the Coalition, developing weapons and strategies for enemies that most species couldn't even imagine. The Terran Extinction Protocol Fleet will be establishing permanent stations throughout the galaxy, Admiral Reaper announced. "We specialize in threats that conventional forces cannot handle. Consider us your immune system against the things that lurk in the dark." As the human fleet prepared to disperse to their new stations, Zaravel found herself with a new understanding of humanity's role in the galaxy. They weren't just another member species. They were the antibodies that civilization needed to survive in a universe full of threats that existed beyond normal comprehension. The Coalition's commitment to peace and exploration was admirable, but it also created vulnerabilities that could be exploited by enemies who recognized no moral boundaries. Humanity was willing to become whatever was necessary to protect those who could not protect themselves from the monsters that existed in the spaces between stars. "Commander," Admiral Reaper said during their final communication, "when the deep ones come, and they will come, remember that some threats require responses that go beyond civilized warfare. We are prepared to cross those lines so that others don't have to." As the human ships disappeared into the void, Zaravel knew that the galaxy had fundamentally changed. Somewhere in the darkness between realities, ancient enemies were stirring, but they would not find the universe undefended. The Deathworlders had answered the call for help, and the galaxy would never face such threats alone again. They had brought Oblivion to their enemies, and in doing so had become the guardians that stood between civilization and the endless dark. The emergency beacon that had started this crisis was silent now, but new beacons were being deployed throughout the galaxy. Not calls for help, but warnings to anything that might threaten the worlds that humanity had chosen to protect. In the depths of space, where reality grew thin and nightmares leaked through from other dimensions, ancient entities paused in their advance. They had expected to find a galaxy of soft, peaceful beings ready for consumption. Instead, they found Deathworlders waiting for them, armed with weapons that could unmake existence itself. The war for reality had begun, and humanity was ready to end it. What did you think of humanity's terrifying efficiency in this cosmic battle? The way they turned annihilation into an art form still gives me chills. These Deathworlders didn't just bring reinforcements, They brought the very concept of Oblivion itself. If you enjoyed watching humanity unleash weapons that literally erase enemies from existence, smash that like button and let me know in the comments what you thought of Admiral Reaper's cold professionalism. Which moment sent shivers down your spine the most? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because we've got more HFY stories coming where humans prove why the galaxy both fears and needs them. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens when the deep ones finally arrive. Until next time, remember, when civilizations cry for help, humanity doesn't just answer. They bring extinction to everything that threatens peace. See you in the next story, Space Explorers.